So is your life complete chaos or just partially chaotic? In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 ways that ADHD creates chaos in my life. And I'm going to share tips and tricks on how I manage to contain my chaos. So let's get started. Have you ever felt like a walking, talking tornado with a trail of mess following behind you wherever you go? There's clothes on the floor, the cupboard doors probably aren't shut, and the doom piles. Oh my god, the doom piles. You know, the piles of random stuff that you collect in an attempt to tidy, but then they just stay in that pile for days, weeks, months, waiting for you to finally organize them and, put them in smaller doom piles. I remember a time when that was much worse though, because there is having doom piles, and then there's bursting into tears at the sight of those doom piles because you have no faith in your capacity to clean up, let alone maintain some sort of order. And honestly, I've stopped trying, but not in a defeatist way, more in a creative way. My husband and I sat down and we talked about which chores we hate the most. For me, that's dishes. It's a sensory thing, I don't like how it feels on my hands, and besides, it's tedious and boring, and I hate it. So I don't do the dishes anymore. And it's not because I threw a little tantrum or because my husband gets sick of seeing a sink full of dishes and just does it for me. He does the dishes because we made a deal. He does the dishes and I clean the litter boxes because that is the chore he hates the most. But here's the thing. I do this chore every single day, but I don't do it because it's my responsibility, and I don't do it because it's important. My brain couldn't care less about those things, but it does care about my husband, and the dopamine hit that I get because I'm doing something for him helps me get the job done every single day. Having these kind of agreements with your partner or your roommates can be a game changer. I mean, we're people pleasers, so we might as well use that trait to be more productive. On top of that, ADHDers do much better when we have very specific responsibilities. It's a lot harder for us to monitor a situation like, say, a garbage can and take the garbage out when it gets full, because without very specific parameters, we're never quite sure when it's our turn or when we should do it, and it just doesn't get done. We're trying to remember so many things that an arbitrary clean this up when you think of it is not going to work for us. It's a juggling act, and the more balls we have in the air, the more likely we are to drop one. There's lots of ways to reduce the amount of balls that you're juggling though. For one thing, you can hire a cleaner. And if you can't afford to have a cleaner come in and clean your whole house, can you afford to have them come in to just clean your bathroom? You can even use this as a means of body doubling. So while she's cleaning the bathroom, you're doing your laundry or whatever. This is going to cut your costs way down and make you more productive. If hiring a cleaner is simply not in the budget, there is another way to juggle less, and that's to simply see less. When we bundle items, our brain naturally unites them and sees them as one object. So if you get baskets or trays, your brain will naturally see less clutter. This is especially helpful if the doom piles seem to end up on the stairs or say like the front entry. You can have different baskets for each member of the family as well, which can be very helpful. One thing to keep in mind though is that your basket should not have a lid. People with ADHD struggle with out of sight, out of mind. So if you put something in a box with a lid, you're going to completely forget it exists. So keep those things still open, just contained. And don't get me started on trays. They're like magic. It works the same way. When you bundle a bunch of objects, say all the lotions and creams in your bathroom, and you put them on one tray, all of a sudden all these loose bottles become one unit. It's just the tray. If you're anything like me, one of those doom piles is a stack of unopened bills. Keeping chaos out of your finances as an ADHDer is next to impossible. Saving money can seem like a completely foreign concept. And even when we have money, we tend to impulse spend and max out our credit cards for no better reason than the dopamine hit. Speaking of which, do you like my new shirt? If you're the sort of person that keeps forgetting to pay your bills, even if you have the money, I strongly suggest you set up automatic payments. If your finances are a little more precarious and that doesn't feel safe for you, then I suggest you start keeping track of all the bills you have each month. I keep a checklist on my phone and I just check it off as I pay each bill, and then I reset it for each month. ADHDers often struggle with unemployment. That's why I think so many of us end up becoming entrepreneurs. That being said, your finances don't become less complicated when you open a business. There's not really a simple solution here. I suggest you get yourself a financial advisor or a debt consolidator, or check out one of the many YouTubers giving away their wisdom for free. Whichever route you take, you're moving forward. Because sometimes the only way you can deal with chaos is to look at it directly and face it head on. And besides, it's almost never as bad as what we think it is. The next area of chaos that I'm going to talk about is something that I've struggled with my entire life. Or at least I think I did. I forget. If you haven't figured it out, the next area of chaos is memory. ADHDers are notorious for losing things. The funny thing about this, though, is that it's not a memory issue, because it turns out you can't remember something until you've encoded it into your memory. And do you know how you encode something into your memory? You pay attention to it. You know, that thing that ADHDers struggle to do consistently. The reason why you can't remember where you put something, no matter what that something is because you weren't there when you set it down. At least not completely. But I digress. We were talking about memory, remember? Losing things may not be memory's fault, but forgetting things certainly is. Whether it's doctor's appointments, school assignments, or our partner's birthday, ADHDers are horrible at remembering future plans. The problem is that finding a scheduling system that works for our brain can be extremely difficult. I don't even know how many daily planners I have that literally just have January filled out and then I've forgotten they exist. How am I supposed to remember my appointments if I can't remember that I have a planner that I wrote them down in? Talk about chaos. What's worse is that your memory isn't just unreliable, it's an outright liar. False memories are a common occurrence for ADHDers. You know, when you have a memory of putting your phone in your back pocket as you leave the house, and then you get halfway to work and you go to grab it and it's not there, so you think you've lost it because you have a distinct memory of putting it in your pocket. But then you get home later on that day and it's sitting on your bed because that memory that you have of putting it in your pocket actually wasn't real, or at least it didn't happen that day. If you've put your phone in your back pocket as you've left the house before, it's like your brain just gives up a sampling of this memory and it doesn't really pay attention to when it happened because the brain can't tell time. To be honest, I don't really trust my memory anymore. My memory is unreliable, but it's fun to have at parties. I mean, the sheer amount of fun facts that I store in my brain is astronomical, truly. But I'm not going to start calling up my memory when I need help remembering important things. I live by my alarms and reminders. I don't try to remember anything anymore. I write everything down. I rely on visual cues like posters and Post-its. And I create rituals around my habits. The brain power that I've saved from this one life hack is unbelievable. I have so much more energy for my creative pursuits now. And guess what? My brain is sharper than ever. It turns out that when you get rid of a lot of your chaos, you have so much more mental clarity. Go figure. Chaos clouds clarity. It's that simple. And there's nowhere that this is more evident than in relationships, whether they're romantic or not. It's hard not to fall in the dopamine trap. Limerence is very common for ADHDers. This is when you feel a much more intense connection with somebody than the experience with them warrants. So, for instance, if you fall in love after the first date, that's limerence. Dopamine isn't interested in love, though. Dopamine only cares about the chase, the drama, the adventure. ADHDers are risk takers. We're impulsive and we're impatient, and that makes for a pretty interesting love life. Unfortunately, once the novelty of a new relationship wears off, we can get bored. And if we don't find other positive ways to produce that dopamine, we will do it with drama. A lot of our insecurity in relationships has to do with rejection sensitivity. We do not take criticism well, even when it's constructive criticism. And we are quick to assume that people are mad at us, even when there's very little evidence to support this. When we are in great relationships, ADHD can still cause chaos. Even the most loving, supportive partner can get frustrated when we don't seem to be pulling our own weight with household chores, or we forget important dates and conversations. So many of our ADHD traits cause friction in a relationship. It's no surprise that ADHDers often end up in abusive or at least toxic relationships. ADHDers are often self-deprecating people pleasers who fall short on areas that other people find easy. Finding a supportive partner as an ADHDer is just about the luckiest thing that can happen. Not because it's rare to find somebody who can love us, but because we desperately need a cheerleader. But also, you are the great love of your life, so you might as well start showing up for yourself. I was going to make the next area of chaos all about kink and sex, but this video is already getting long. I'm going to have to do a part 2, and besides, I think that kink and sex deserve their very own episode. So if that's something that you're interested in seeing, don't forget to subscribe. But until then, let's go on to our last area of chaos, and that's emotional dysregulation. It is so common for ADHDers to have mood swings that a lot of us end up getting misdiagnosed with bipolar. The big difference, though, is that mania can last weeks, if not months, where an ADHDer's mood tends to change more frequently. So we can focus in on the good stuff and get lost in the excitement, or we can hyper-focus on our pain. We can also simply forget about whatever we were focusing on. Hyperfocus only lasts as long as hyperfocus lasts, and once it's over, we can completely stop caring about the thing that we were literally just engrossed in just moments before. Because ADHDers experience such big emotions and it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, we often become dissociative as a means to prevent overwhelm. People often think this looks like zoning out, but for ADHDers, zoning out usually means that we are lost in thought, not trying to suppress them. Dissociation is like an emotional numbing. It can show up as a lack of care for oneself or the world around them. This can also manifest as abnormal shifts in your personality or behavior. So if you're acting completely out of character, but you can't seem to stop yourself, then you're probably dissociating. But luckily, there are many ways to improve your emotional regulation. Meditation is the gold standard for developing emotional stability. But a lot of ADHDers really struggle with the concept. They think it means that they have to sit still and clear their mind. But meditation is really just about moving your focus from your mind into your body. By breathing, you start paying attention to what's going on in your body, and because you're counting, you can't really think about past events or future worries. Another really great thing to know about breathing is that we can use it to calm our nervous system. Back in our hunter-gatherer days, we only had 2 threats: starvation and predators. Whether we were being chased or doing the chasing, our bodies needed the extra energy, and our brains needed to be the most effective and alert. This intensified state is our fight or flight response, and we get into it simply by increasing our breathing. We can calm ourselves by doing the opposite, by exhaling for longer than we inhale. Because as far as the nervous system is concerned, if you're not breathing heavy, there's no threat. Still, meditation isn't for everybody. If you're the sort of person that feels like you need to move to relax, then sitting still is probably not going to do it for you. That's where yoga comes in. Yoga is the perfect practice for improving your physical balance, as well as just your mobility in general. But the wonderful thing about this is that the part of your brain that controls your physical balance also controls your emotional regulation. So when you improve your physical balance, you are going to improve your mental state automatically. If neither meditation or yoga float your boat, then I highly suggest that you start a journaling practice. You can use prompts such as, how am I feeling, where am I feeling it in my body, and what meaning am I giving it? Or you can do automatic writing, where you just write whatever comes to mind without judgment, and you can kind of look at it later and sort of sift through it and see if you can find any meaning within it. Either practice can really help you tame your chaos, especially if you stick with it. It's amazing how much more effective it is once you've been doing it for a number of years. Thanks for watching. I'm Kristen. This is Creatively Divergent. Please like, share, and subscribe if you want to keep an eye out for part 2 of Creative Chaos. And I'll see you then. Bye. I could talk about chaos for days, but it's just going to get less and less concise, and this video is going to turn into an exercise in chaos. Nobody needs that.